Hey guys, TrainerDC here, coming at you with another video. Back in February of this year on Pokemon Day, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green were released on the Nintendo Switch eShop, and shortly after their release, it was leaked via the code of the game that Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald were all planned to come to the Nintendo Switch at some point, presumably in the not too distant future. We had no inkling as to when these ports would come to the Switch, but now we have a new leak coming from Special Nick on Twitter that is saying the ports for Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald respectively are planned for late September or October. I think that this release window isn't all that surprising. Like, to be honest, I was imagining that these ports would either come out in August or September or Pokemon Day next year. I figured that this fall would make more sense because we have no game this year for Pokemon. Winds and Waves isn't coming until next year at the end of the year in September, so it would make sense for them to fill this gap year with more ports of older Pokemon games, and apparently, according to Special Nick, they're coming in late September or at some point in October. And if you don't know who he is, he does have a bit of a track record. He's the one who leaked that we're getting a Switch 2 and Switch 2 Pro controller themed after Ocarina of Time, which just leaked. We saw images of the packaging recently, so he does have real sources here. So yeah, we're gonna get Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald at some point this year, and I'll be honest here, I did end up buying Fire Red and Leaf Green on the Nintendo Switch, and I've played maybe like an hour and a half, 2 hours of Fire Red and Leaf Green. And while I'm all for Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald being ported to the Switch, what I've realized is it's kind of hard to get back into old Pokemon. Like, don't get me wrong, these are some of the greatest Pokemon games to ever be created. I love the original Generation 3 with Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Gen 4 with Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, Platinum. Like, those are some of my favorite games of all time, right? But they're pretty dated to play today, and I'm not talking about graphically speaking, I'm just talking about quality of life. Like, it is not fun having no EXP share. It is not fun having to have an HM slave in your party. And while, again, I think it's really cool that we're getting all these ports, I wish they would do a little bit more than just straight ports. I wish they would actually do either a remaster that they actually go in there, fix the quality of life stuff that I'm talking about here, or instead what I would personally prefer, and I've said this before in other videos, but go have Ilka or Pokemon Works make a one-to-one faithful remake of these games, just like they did with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. I know Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl aren't exactly the grandiose Pokemon games we were hoping for Diamond and Pearl's remakes, but they're good ways to play Diamond and Pearl. Like, I know those games got a lot of hate, and I don't think they're perfect. I think they could have done more with them, but they're a modern way, a more modern way, I should say, to play Diamond and Pearl. Like, if you don't have a DS, there is no way for you to get your hands on Diamond and Pearl. So you have Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl on the Nintendo Switch, and while these Switch ports are giving people the option to play the Kanto remakes in Fire Red and Leaf Green, to play the original Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, to experience the Hoenn region as it was originally constructed before Mega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, they're really hard to get into today. They are really hard to play because, again, the quality of life features just aren't there that we're used to with modern Pokemon, but that's neither here nor there. It's kind of hard to do that in a port unless if we do a full-on remake or some sort of remaster of the game and make some quality of life changes to it. But the last thing I wanted to talk about today in this video is this going to be the last ports we see on the Nintendo Switch for Pokemon, at least for the time being, right? We know Fire Red and Leaf Green happened earlier this year. In the code of those games, it leaked that Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald were coming, but there's been no other leaks indicating that any other Pokemon games are coming to the Nintendo Switch eShop, and I would argue we're probably not going to see anything else come for a while at least. Like, what they're doing here is what they did on the 3DS. The 3DS had Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow come to the eShop, I believe, in 2016 for the 20-year anniversary of Pokemon. And then later on, a year or so later, they had Gold, Silver, and Crystal come to the eShop as well. They're doing the exact same thing here, but with the GBA Pokemon. That was the original Game Boy and Game Boy Color, respectively. Now they're moving on to the GBA, having Fire Red and Leaf Green. Now they're going to have Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, and I don't see them moving to the DS anytime soon. And the reason I say that is because, number one, how are you going to handle the whole two-screen thing? That's something we haven't seen Nintendo touch yet, having any DS ports come to the Switch, because they have to work around the whole dual screen thing and the Switch only having one screen. There's a plethora of ideas I have as to how they could handle it. I think very easily you could just do picture-in-picture. I think you could also release an accessory that has a second screen on it that you attach to your Joy-Cons, then you have a second screen that would be basically like your bottom screen on the DS, but I don't know if they would go down that route because that's probably going to be rather expensive for them to do, and I don't know how many people would actually buy that, and you can't make that a mandatory thing for people to play DS on the Switch. So there's a problem there with how would they do that, how would they work around all that. But also as well, would they want to release Diamond and Pearl on the same platform that you could buy Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl on? Like, I don't think so, because then at that point, that would detract from people wanting to buy Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. And yeah, you could argue that if you wanted Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, you would have bought it already, and I'm not going to sit here and say you're wrong, but if someone's getting a Switch today and doesn't have any way to play the Sinnoh region, they would go buy those remakes. But then if you have the ports as a cheaper alternative, would you just opt for the ports because they are so similar? They are one-to-one remakes, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, that is, of the original Diamond and Pearl. There's of course the whole Black and White situation and Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Those two regions, being Unova and Johto respectively, really have no way for people to play them on any console, because you have to go back and buy a DS or a 3DS, and then you'd have to pay hundreds of dollars for those cartridges. Those are games that definitely are in need of a revisit, but I don't know if they would do those in the form of a port, or if they would rather do a one-to-one faithful remake, or heck, maybe even just a Legends game to touch on those regions, like we just saw with Pokemon Legends ZA being our way to revisit the Kalos region, or at least part of it, in Lumio City. But for now, the big leak for today is that apparently the Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald ports are coming to the Nintendo Switch family of systems later this year, not all that far away, in late September or at some point during the month of October. I am curious if they're just going to drop a trailer on YouTube and then say it's coming out in a week like they did for Fire Red and Leaf Green, but now that I'm talking through this, honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if at the end of this month they announce these games at Pokemon Worlds, because Pokemon Worlds usually is a place where we get announcements for the video games, for the TCG and whatnot, and there really is nothing for them to announce this year, given that Winds and Waves isn't coming until next year, and they've been radio silent on that game, and we know from leaks and rumors that they're not planning on talking about it again until Pokemon Day next year or January next year. So they're gonna need something to talk about here at Pokemon Worlds, and I would not be shocked if Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald ports are the highlight for the video game series here at Worlds this year at the end of this month. But are they really gonna have us wait a month from announcement to release for these ports? That I don't know. Anyways, let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think about all this. What do you guys think about the fact that these Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald ports that leaked all the way back in the spring are apparently finally coming at the end of September or at some point during the month of October? Are you looking forward to the release of these ports on the Nintendo Switch? Or are you like me, where while it's cool to have these as an option for you to play on the Switch, it's really hard to get back into old Pokemon just because of those quality of life improvements that we've gotten over the most recent generations? If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to see more content like this from Trainer DC. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.